Golden Sovereign Mines is a pre-IPO opportunity to invest in a gold consolidation vehicle focused on the toll treatment of ore mined by African artisanal miners. AI will also be a feature of this enterprise. To talk us through the idea, I'm delighted to be joined by the Managing Director, Christian West. So, Christian, I've described your business as an idea, but what does Golden Sovereign Mines do or intends to do, and how long has the business been in existence?
Well, Sarah, thank you for having me this morning. Really appreciate it. Golden Sovereign Mine was formed earlier this year in about March 2025, but that was on the back of some work that we'd been doing looking at various golden exploration projects across Africa. But where we've decided to focus is on gold processing and specifically in Zambia. So we're not actually looking at the exploration side and the development of mine. We're actually looking at the production and processing of gold bought and in partnership with third-party artisanal miners. So what we do is we work with the existing artisanal mining cooperatives. And what we do is we take their ore that they mine and we process it. And we do that in a much more efficient way than they're doing that at the moment. But it also has ancillary benefits, which is more environmentally friendly practices in extracting the gold from the ore that they produce. So it's a bit of a win-win for them and for us. What we've said is we're going to focus on the cash generation. And that's really important because particularly at this stage where we've got gold somewhere between 4,000, 4,200, our focus is reducing our capital expenditure and looking at gross margins. So we think that we're in a place where we could probably produce at mine somewhere between $1,200 and $1,500 an ounce.
I'm just wondering, let's be realistic here though, because how can you incentivize these small gold explorers who might have generations of the business in their blood? Why should they cross over to the regulated or corporate side?
That's a really good question because many of these areas they have been working for a number of years, but many of them are new gold rush areas. And so when we work alongside the artisanal miners, they have to have benefits from working with us rather than us just turning up and saying, right, let's do this together. And that's really from two areas. First, there has to be a commercial benefit, but there also has to be a sort of a social benefit alongside that. So as we're not mining our own ore and producing our own or building a mine, we rely on them for the provision of their ore. So we see them as stakeholders and as partners. So the most important thing for them from a commercial perspective is we build a processing plant at or close to where they're mining. That reduces their costs for transporting ore. And it also means that we can provide them with a fair price at site rather than potentially having to travel for miles and miles and miles and not receiving a fair price.
So at the heart of this, though, is trust. So how would you describe relations with communities, chiefs, mining departments?
So trust is really, really important. We form joint ventures with two specific groups. Our first project is a place called Rufunsa, and we're doing that in conjunction with a Canadian-based NGO called VCFD. They've been working within the area and particularly closely with the chieftainess there to create those relationships. Without that, you're just a foreigner who turns up and trying to do something. What we're doing is we're establishing those relationships. We've established the relationships. And what we've experienced is making commitments that are deliverable produces results. Making promises which you don't live up to, you're going to lose trust and you're going to lose the community alongside that. So we've been very careful about positioning ourselves as partners and them as stakeholders. So we're working together. With respect to the Ministry of Mines, et cetera, because the company's focus is on processing, we don't have to do a lot of the work that's involved with exploration licenses, small scale exploration licenses, and we move quite quickly into production. So we need to apply for and have applied for processing licenses and gold trading licenses, which can happen relatively quickly. And our experience with the Ministry of Mines in Zambia is that that's actually fairly easy is the wrong word, but it is timely and can be managed because it is a process as opposed to anything else.
So you briefly touched on the wider benefit of your proposition. You mentioned the environment, but what about the other wider benefits in terms of empowerment, education, and a daily structure?
So Rufunsa is our first project, and that's where our initial focus is. Within the broader Rufunsa area, away from where our processing site is going to be established, they've got the need for support with their school, support with their hospital that is there. But working with the local communities doesn't just mean the miners, it means all the people who work and are sort of dependent on the activity there. So, for instance, we've already started to mobilize some of the women's groups to put in small scale gardening, which will then supply fresh vegetables to not just their families and them, but also to the mine. So we'll be actually sort of buying from them and financing and funding those operations. So it's a sort of you work all the way down the chain. It's not just with the miners, it's with the whole community so that the whole community can benefit.
So take us on a journey, help us visualize. You've mentioned Rufunsa there, three projects that have been targeted in Zambia. How would you describe the jurisdiction in terms of infrastructure, business-friendly administration, and conflict? Is it free from conflict?
Yeah, no, Zambia is a very well-respected jurisdiction in Africa. We looked at projects across a number of countries. And we're very comfortable with Zambia as a jurisdiction. I mean, I think it's ranked number 3 on the Fraser Institute within Africa. I think Botswana and Morocco are ahead of them, but apart from that, that's where they sit. So we're comfortable with that. Zambia's been mining for a long time. It's better known for the copper space, but more and more gold is being discovered, and more gold is being exploited. From an infrastructure perspective, all three of our projects are within 2 to 4 hour drive from Lusaka, the capital, on tarmac roads. After that, you get into some slightly more challenging roads, anywhere between 20 minutes and 40 minutes or an hour to get to the mine site. But infrastructure generally is pretty good. At Mwamba, for instance, there's overhead power cables that we can tap into, and communications have been improved enormously by the arrival of people like Starlink. So, from a jurisdictional perspective, we're very happy. It's a stable democracy. There's no conflict. Law is based on English law, which does make things much more easy to manage as well.
And are you happy with the way that operations are going to be funded? Where is the money coming from?
Well, to date, financing has come from the founders and also from some seed investors. We're in the process of raising £750,000. That will get our first project at Rufunsa up and operating. And going back to what I said earlier about cash generation and the nature of the business that we've decided to go into, our expectation is that the cash generation from there will provide the financing for the rollout of plants 2 and plants 3. Now, that's not to say that we won't need additional capital. It's likely that we will, but because we're generating cash rather than just expending cash, that will reduce the requirement to tap the markets for more dilutive capital.
Okay, understood. I'm thinking about partnerships as well because with one of the assets that I've read about, iron cap mining, the Korean government provided a grant. I'm just wondering, will they remain a strategic partner or are they being targeted as such, or is there work done there?
Yeah, so IronCap's interesting. The principal in that is a local Zambian guy called Eric Tembo. Eric's very kindly agreed to join the board of GSM. That money that came from the Korean was very helpful. It's defined a very small, well, I say very small, it's about 15, 17,000 ounces of gold there. So that's provided an initial definition of a resource that we will look to exploit as when we get that plant up and running. The Koreans will stay as shareholders in that joint venture. And we think there's a good opportunity to develop that as we move forward. So it's been very beneficial to IronCap, and for us as financiers and operators moving into it, it provides us with a stakeholder who is financially interested, but also has access to further capital from Korea.
So let's go to plant 1. I'm just wondering what the timelines are for this to become a reality when you take into consideration plant manufacture, community negotiations, and any rights that may need to be applied for.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the one of the issues that the mining industry generally has is that the time from a discovery through to the time of permitting and then production can have an extended timeline. Again, that's one of the reasons that we've looked to move into the processing business rather than the exploration business, because our timeline to initial production can be quite short. So once we complete this round of financing for the £750,000, that will provide us with the capital to place the order. The machinery is coming out of South Africa, and the lead time for delivery into Lusaka is around 2, possibly 2.5 months. So it's quite possible that within 3 months to 3.5 months, we could have the first plant up, commissioning, and then moving into production in quite short order.
So, to be devil's advocate, what are the biggest obstacles to your proposition, or to the best of your knowledge, have you identified, preempted, and have the strategy to mitigate any issues?
Yes, to a great extent, because we've removed some of the geological risk by not going into the exploration space, we've sort of broken down our risk profile and our risk management into three pieces, and that's community, regulatory, and operational. So from community perspective, as we've already touched upon, building those relationships and doing it with forming joint ventures both with the artisanal miners, but also with local operating groups has been really, really important. That will continue to be a focus, and maintaining them and maintaining our integrity and that trust that we touched on earlier is really, really important. From a licensing perspective, the laws in Zambia are fairly clear. As long as we maintain, which we will, the licenses and maintain all of the environmental requirements that we have, then we don't think that that will be a problem. And equally, because we're focusing on processing, the licenses that we require are processing licenses and gold trading licenses rather than just exploration and development licenses. So it makes it a little bit easier. So where we can really move the dial and where we're focusing on is our operational work, because maintaining the throughput, making sure that the grades are correct, and ensuring that the maintenance is correct is actually where we're going to actually make the money, because it is all about getting the tons through, processing it efficiently, and then providing the product at the back end. And so that's where the majority of our focus from a day-to-day perspective will be, is on making sure that plant runs as well as it can at the nameplate levels to provide the revenue that we expect.
So, you say we and our, who is on the board and what relevant experience do they have?
Well, we're lucky. We've got what we believe is a very supportive and experienced board. Our chairwoman is a lady called Haruko Fukuda. Haruko is the former CEO and director of the World Gold Council. She's also served on the board of Investec Investment Bank and Volvo. We have Dr. Elena Clarici. Elena is a mining engineer. She's Serbian by nationality, and also has her PhD in AI in the mining space, and has developed a project in Serbia. Eric Tembo, who is our joint venture partner on Ironcap, he's joining the board, and he has been in the mining area and the finance space in sub-Saharan Africa for the last 15 years. And then our last director is a gentleman called Simon Perkis. Simon has spent 30 years plus in the mining space. And importantly for us, his most recent project was in Zambia. He acquired, developed, and then subsequently sold a copper project. And that experience is extremely helpful for us, simply because as a man who has done that, he's given us a great deal of insight on the best way to manage both the communities, but also the regulatory environment, as well as looking for a commercial and profitable exit.
I'm quite sure that collectively you're looking at the macro environment. Gold is making record high after record high. Do you collectively believe that it can continue its northwards trajectory? And if so, why do you think that's the case? Are we experiencing the third gold cycle?
I mean, it's quite possible, given the geopolitical issues that we're all experiencing around the world. Gold is a flight to safety. The gold price is one thing that we cannot influence. We've seen projections from various investment banks talking about $3,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. Our focus has to be dealing with what we can actually achieve. And I think if we can manage the production costs of between $1,200 and $1,500 an ounce, then whether it's at 3,500 or 4,500, our margin, our gross margin is attractive enough. I mean, I hope obviously is that gold will continue to appreciate, and I think there's a decent argument for that. But our valuations and our projections are done on 3,800, and everything above that really is gravy for us.
Okay, Christian, does the board, do you intend to list? And if not, how are shareholders going to be rewarded under your current structure?
Yeah, it's absolutely our intention to list, and I think that the proposition of a cash generative gold company is quite compelling. Um, we will require more capital to roll out plants 2 and 3. But as I said earlier, I think we can satisfy quite a lot of that from the internally generated cash from the first project. So our anticipation is we will look towards a listing at the end of the first half of 2026. By that time, we expect Rufunsa to be up and running and generating capital. We can then supplement that with potentially a raise from the market at the end of 2026, which will enable us to expand our operations into Plant 2 and Plant 3.
So finally, I'm speaking to you sort of mid-November 2025. What's the first piece of news flow that investors may learn about?
Well, on completion of this financing round, we'll obviously announce the order of the equipment, and then subsequently in early 2026, we'll talk about the commissioning, first gold pours, and then the work that we will be doing on developing Project 2 and Project 3. And I think with that sort of news flow, particularly with production coming through, we've got a great opportunity to push forward with the ambition of our listing in Q2 of 2026.
Lovely. Christian West, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to speaking to you when you do indeed list. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you.